This video is sponsored by PCBWay. I think this video really started off when I was watching a lot of Todd Parker's videos on like his tool collection and which ones are best, and it was this idea of like a project panel, which isn't a half bad idea actually, because I've been using these tools for the past couple of months now, and I've been storing them in tool carts, and the thing that happens is when I store them in a wrong spot, then I'm cycling through all of the drawers and it takes a bunch of time out of my day. And at some point in the project, usually it ends up on this workbench that I built a little while ago. It has this platform underneath as well, where I've been storing the tools up until now as well, so it's not really organized in any particular way. The idea basically is to create a panel that is on monitor arms, and that's a little bit above the work surface itself, so you can still use the entire work surface, but your tools are accessible really quickly as well. So the initial process for this project was pretty similar to most of the other projects I've done on the channel in the past, so I'm going to skip over a lot here, but basically I got this design off of Make a Case for a box, which you can fill in the dimensions of, and we can modify that design in Shaper 3D. In this case, the process of building this thing is also a great indication for what type of stuff I want on the project panel. So I take it to this massive laser cutter. This is the Spider X1S Pro. But essentially throughout the entire process of using this laser cutter to build something, we first cut something out, then we glue it all together, sand it down, maybe apply some lacquer in the end. You somewhat need to put a mask on your face because otherwise there's a lot of dangerous like fumes and dust and all kinds of stuff. So I have this A2P3 mask from GVS, which is really quite awesome. It's really comfortable, and I want to integrate it onto the panel itself because this is the number one thing I keep losing, but then I continue doing the project, right? So if you can't find a screwdriver, then you just can't do the project. But when you can't find this, you can still do it, but it's hazardous for your health essentially. So I took the mask to the 3D scanning station, and underneath that I'd like to put my laser cutting goggles. These protect your eyes essentially when you're laser cutting stuff. I never go near the laser cutter without these on. Even with them on, I like close one of my eyes, which is really stupid, but it's just like, I want to be 100% certain that, something doesn't blind me essentially. So after 3D scanning those, we can take those to Shaper 3D, and it's totally overkill to actually 3D scan them before integrating, but it makes my life a lot easier, seems so the process is there anyway. Especially for the mask itself, I went around it with the spline tool and created kind of a butterfly shape, which allows it to drop into place. The laser cutting goggles have a little indent of a box type thing, but we can also put some normal safety glasses in there with it. In some cases, it's kind of hard for me to do a project like this because there's a ton of somewhat like dead space around this panel thing, right? And I try to optimize things as much as possible. But there's also this aspect to having a proper spot for, a specific tool or especially safety equipment, so that when you see it laying around someplace else, then you immediately link it to like, okay, it needs to be over there. Like when you see something laying around and you don't even know where you need to put it, then that costs a lot of energy in terms of like mental capacity. A little while ago I bought a Vera mini ratchet, and I really like that thing. It's in my EDC toolkit and it's working out really nicely, but I wanted a larger screwdriver as well. So I bought the Vera 816 RA, so it has that lock system at the top over here, which is really solid. The only thing I don't really like about it is that when you switch it this way around, then you drive it in the other way around. So on that other Vera mini ratchet, when you actually switch it that way, that's also the side you're like screwing in the screw. This one's the other way around. It's actually been really rewarding buying your own tools, because I used to like borrow and steal tools from my parents and my granddad. When you actually buy a new pair of Knipex, they're all like smooth and nice and they don't have any bent tips and that kind of stuff. So these are a pair of needle nose pliers, got them a couple of weeks ago, and these have been working out really nicely, not just for removing support structures from like 3D print projects, but also prying bolts and screws out of places like in the ceiling and that kind of stuff. And for some reason I also bought myself some Knipex wire cutters, but after looking at the needle nose pliers just now, I noticed that these have wire cutters on there as well. I do sometimes do some electrical work, so it'd be nice to have these in the kit as well. If there's one tool out of this collection that I can highly recommend you get, it's this Knipex wrench. This is the 180mm version, and it doesn't seem like it's too useful in too many scenarios, but for some reason I gravitate towards it more and more in the projects that I do. I really wish they'd make a multi-tool version of it, where on one of the handles, for example, you'd have like a knife that would flip out and bottle opener, that kind of stuff. I've actually been lacking a proper unboxing knife for a little while now, where Now, I've been using knives which are way too deep, and then you can actually damage the thing that's inside, so you're very careful. But with these things, it's basically a little less intense. And this next thing is probably the biggest upgrade I've made to my tool collection personally, and I can highly recommend you get a pair of these. These are electrician scissors, and for some reason they have this raised edge on the side, and it cuts basically through anything that you could throw it at. So cables, you know, really high gauge cables, bunch of fabric. I've been using it more than I would have expected to use a pair of scissors. And the last one for this panel is a tape measure, but I already had that one laying around. And the way I've come up with the design for this one is basically everything needs to be very easily accessible, but also be in the right spot at the right time. So if I grab a Knipex wrench, I want it to be ready to go right away, right? If I grab the scissors, then I want to grab it like that so that it's immediately ready to be used and very easy to put back in a spot as well. Pretty much everything on this panel is designed in that way. Now, if you'd like access to the files that I made for this project, then you can check out my Patreon page. And if you want to modify any of the designs, so to say, then you can do that over there as well. But I'm also uploading this to the PCBWay projects page, which is the sponsor of today's video. If you'd like to do a project like this, but you don't actually have a 3D printer, then you can also upload the file on PCBWay, choose which material you'd like to print it in, and then a couple of days later it arrives in the mail. But they also offer a ton of other prototyping services like PCB production and assembly, CNC machining, sheet metal fabrication, injection molding, and of course also the 3D printing service that I just mentioned. So PCBWay has been a really awesome supporter of the channel for the longest time now, and I really appreciate them, so special thanks. And I'll leave some links in the description down below. And it's constructed in two components, so we have the top plate and then we have those bottom plates, and those bottom plates have an outline which sometimes conforms to the tool itself so that it sticks in its spot a little bit better. But that also means, well, that's kind of the point of it, so that you don't put tools in different spots. For the second panel, I'd like to go more to the post-processing side of things, so actually cleaning up a print. And one of the tools I bought for this one was a deburring tool. I've never actually worked with these things before, but they're a lot safer than actually using a knife to clean up a 3D print on the side. Actually comes with a bunch of replacement tips, but the main body isn't actually like magnetic, which is a big shame because some of the stuff on this panel is magnetically held in place. And it would have been really nice if everything would just like snap on quite solid. In some instances, it's also really useful if you can use a little file to, increase some tolerances or decrease some tolerances of a 3D print, so you can actually like push them into each other, for example. And I bought this little file set which came with a brush in there as well, but I didn't really use that. And I wanted this panel to be kind of magnetic, so all of those files are like magnetically connected to it. That deburring tool, of course, wasn't magnetic, so I couldn't integrate that in that way. And then we have some storage space for the additional little bits for the deburring tool on the side. I also need some drills and some bits that actually work with like the Vera ratcheting screwdriver and that kind of stuff, so that we can connect things to each other. And this will be split up into two panels. So that first panel, I borrowed some of the design from a different project, and it basically holds all of those bits magnetically in place. It's really satisfying to push them back into its spot, and really easy as well because it has that chamfer on the edges over there. If you're enjoying the video so far, by the way, then definitely consider subscribing, leaving a like, leaving a comment. A comment helps the most, I think. Of course, this is still like an organizational project, and I have received some comments like, we're doing organizational projects a lot. That's true. I've been trying to get stuff a little bit more, in the right mindset of like building stuff, and I feel like we can now start and rip stuff apart again, 3D scan it and make some cool stuff again. So stay tuned for that. So the last panel on this panel is not organized in a way. It has a bunch of baskets in there, and I want to chuck a bunch of drill bits in this thing so that I don't feel like the entire toolkit is ruined when one of the drill bits like breaks. It's not there anymore, so it feels weird. I actually wasn't expecting this project to work out so well, which might sound kind of strange, like why do you build it then? But I had this idea like a long time ago, and I was only able to recently act upon it. So yeah, that vision that I had in the beginning wasn't really there. It was actually quite cool because that work surface is all accessible. The tools are nicely in their spot, so to say. And I left some gaps at the bottom as well, which initially I wanted to put some lights in so that it would shine on the work surface, which I think still would work out really quite nicely. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it at least, and I hope it gave you some inspiration. If it did, leave a like, leave a comment. See you in the next one.